Do you have a passion for the paranormal, the unexplained, the stuff of legend which has some kind of mystique? No? You want facts and answers? Well, be prepared to be confused. Hey guys, MasakoX here. It's a very weird thing being a fan of something. Yes, it's pretty normal to like something, and wish to express that to all, or even just to yourself, but when you have gotten as much of it as you can out of it, you are left wanting. That is the way with Dragon Ball fans these days for me. The thing we need to remember is that there was a good couple of decades of not any content happening before we got Super. This couple of year gap between Super and where we are now, between series, isn't all that big, even though it may feel like it's quite big sometimes. That being said, during these moments of not much going on, there are some things you can do, or the official sources can do, explain away what's already there. Sometimes we as Dragon Ball fans would just like to have some kind of clarity and explanation when it comes to certain topics. More often than not, it's nice to have more information about something. You know, that means you get a better understanding, to have a better overall focus and perspective about the plot point that we didn't have before. It gives you that emotion of thinking, oh, so that's what it does. Like with the whole Yardratian revelation in the manga. Don't get me started about Yamcha's more recent return to form. But then again, on the rare occasion, there are moments that we personally believe that less is actually more. Sometimes it might be better to just have the bare minimum of information to go by, to allow our imaginations to flourish and add our own kind of spin on something in the official lore. An open-ended story is sometimes really good. You can imagine an ending of whatever you want. And also what's good about these is that these questions can bloom into what ifs, the bread and butter of this very channel. So it's a very fine balance between knowing everything and knowing enough. Today's video was created after considering two factors. The first one, the one that got this figurative ball rolling, is connected to a comment left by a viewer of our channel, GeekFreak17. The other one was a recent reveal from the latest game in the franchise's long history of gaming, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, something I'm streaming by the way. That game's purpose, aside from making a good action RPG and giving us something to do in January, is for Akira Toriyama to spend some time on some tidbits of the Z lore that might have been overlooked or not really understood. The biggest one that Haverock and I saw upon first inspection, as well as the thing that gets the ball rolling today, is that Piccolo supposedly did not destroy the moon, but merely created an illusion of the moon being destroyed. Ooh. Now before we all start to panic and expunge all the things that we learnt from the original series, thinking it's all meaningless, just remember, this is a video game first and foremost. Sure, the information is pretty interesting to see, and it coming from the creator of the series itself carries a lot of weight, but it's primarily meant to be its own universe, the game's one. But this isn't by any means a new canon. I don't like using that word anymore. This whole exercise is for Toriyama to revisit his musings from days gone by. And while the whole moon thing was pretty silly in the first place, it was a Dragon Ball kind of silly in a way. It was something charming, and just something we accepted as part of the legendary story. In a way, trying to make it seem more realistic and logical by making it all scientifically accurate, trying to be all pragmatic like, just makes it overcomplicated now. It's such a weird thing to fix. We believe that the writers of the game had the best intentions of mind, of course, but this particular plot hole and question is one of those cases of less is more. We didn't really need to dwell on it. Dragon Ball is already sort of a fantasy world when it comes down to it, and while we begrudgingly accept S-cells being part of the equation, we just always assume that the moon works differently than in the real world. But speaking of S-cells, I know in the real world that you guys really didn't want to know about S-cells when I made a video about it. It's one of my most disliked videos. Duly noted. Short disclaimer, by the way. At the time of writing this script, I've just started playing Kakarot for myself, with Haverock having not purchased a copy yet himself. So we are not aware of things further on in the story. That could easily change. But if we do find them, we will discuss them in a separate video, or during the live stream playthroughs, of us playing the game. This is merely one of the catalysts for the script. Let's continue with a really interesting one, again from the Kakarot game. You know that there are humanoid animals in the dragon world, all shapes and sizes, including hippos? Well, we might have a reason for that being a thing, and it was brought to light by Virus Kid on Twitter. In short, people became animals in this world because they wanted to turn into beast men, but it went wrong. It was meant to be a temporary transformation, like some sort of power-up, but it led to it becoming permanent and they were stuck in that form. It turns out it was a craze that swept the planet, and it sort of faded away as people cottoned on to the idea that taking this supposed anamorpholine was defective. It was a fad. It's kind of gone away. Sure, they weren't derided by humans, they were still equal members, but it must have been embarrassing for a time. And as Virus Kid points out, King Furry might have partaken in this fad. Oh my. The next thing to focus on here in this video is the whole Grand Supreme Kai thing. As if the godly hierarchy wasn't confusing enough. And for those of you who don't know how the hierarchy works in general, do check out my video on the subject and how the Kais rank up from Kami upwards. I'm actually surprised that a video that I made back in 2017 is still accurate. Either way, it will remind you of the key facts. So what we know at the time of writing this script is that the Grand Supreme Kai is very much a thing now, which is in the storyline, instead of just being a faded memory from a flashback from millions of years ago. Now, he is an integral part of Good Boo, and a crucial part of the first phase of the Moro arc. The Grand Supreme Kai is Shin's boss, effectively. He does seem to be honoured and remembered as the greatest of the Supreme Kai, so it all seems pretty valid that he might be their superior. Also, the fact that he still exists instead of being totally absorbed into Boo kind of solves the whole problem and conundrum of Beerus not succumbing when the Grand Supreme Kai was consumed by Boo when Bibbidi was around. As for why the Elder Kai has never referred to the Grand Supreme Kai before now, well, he was busy being locked away in the Z-Sword way before the Grand Supreme Kai's time. And according to the timelines in the Daizenshu, Beerus put the Elder Kai inside that vessel roughly 75 million years ago, while the whole Moro situation occurred a much more recent 10 million years ago or so, with the original Majin Buu and Bibbidi team up happening 5 million years later. These are ginormous numbers to work with here, but we are dealing with Kais who can live for eons easily. This, again, makes Beerus, and Champa by proxy, ridiculously old, as it does with his time as a destroyer. And here we have Belmod retiring after merely, not even a 250,000 years in the position. What a quitter. This could be possibly explained away by the fact that maybe Beerus's kind simply lives longer naturally, and his hibernation period cut the time of his destroyership by at least half. Where Belmod's species of clown people, I guess, have a much more standard humanoid lifespan. But this still feels a bit like a stretch. The most logical answer that we've already mentioned on some occasion is that Toyotaro simply wanted to put a random number in the manga to make it sound cool and big. When Belmod was celebrating nearly 88 million days as the destroyer of Universe 11, not thinking that anyone would actually convert that into years, nor actually take it seriously. You got us there. Come on, Toyotaro, let's be real here. We're fans too of this series. You of all people should know how this works. I will not miss any opportunity to say, "But Toyotaro!" when it's called for. The other thing that seems not really well explained are the Compass Supreme Kais. You know, those ones that were just playing around in the Boo flashback, frolicking around in the Kai world before they got eaten for lunch by Boo. It still feels pretty odd that we only see them in Universe 7. Is this a local thing, only unique to Universe 7? Or do other universes also have Compass Kais who aren't important enough to figure into the story proper? Well, we do now know that they do exist. In fact, we've already met one. Zamasu. Zamasu was originally a regular North Kai. Not a supreme one, just a regular one. Which kinda means that all the universes have this sort of system, and the easiest explanation of why we haven't seen other Compass Kais is, well, that's like an additional 84 designs for the Kais that the designer of the series would have to conjure up. Is it really worth that much of an effort? These guys would not have much to do or say in terms of contacts with GODs, destroyers, and the Tournaments of Power, so what would be the point of making up these designs if they only maybe feature in 1 or 2 shots? They would not add anything to the story at this point, so why bother? But they do exist. Now, the next one is not as simple to answer as the others, as it's sort of two questions in one. First, why did Beerus not recognise Boo when they met in Super, and are there different kinds of Boo hiding within other universes? As for the first one, it is possible that Beerus did know about Majin Buu, but the Boo he knew looked very different to the one that we are familiar with, Mr. Boo, Fat Boo. He's a pretty recent development in the history of this character. Boo was sealed away far from Beerus's gaze, and so he probably never clapped eyes on Boo as we know after he absorbed the Grand Supreme Kai. But surely his appearance, pink amorphous blob, as well as his attire would have given him some kind of pause for thought, but nope! Or should that be pause for thought because he's a cat man? But do beings like Majin Buu exist in other universes? Well, first of all, we need to go back to the origins of Buu that had been retconned at least one time by Toriyama in the past. Originally, he was written to be the direct creation of Bibidi, the father of Babidi, two potato-headed wizards. Right now though, he is considered to be a being that existed in time immemorial, a being who has been around since the universe began, and Bibidi just so happened to be powerful enough to control him. Prior to that though, Boo would cycle in between rampages and hibernation, kind of like what Boo does now. He does things, then he goes to sleep. Apparently, he is meant to be evil incarnate, absorbing evil elements of mortals, becoming more violent in the process as he does so. Now, this feels like Toriyama added some Janemba elements into the mix here, don't you think? Or maybe Janemba got things from Boo? Maybe with a sprinkling of Hirudegarn in there for good measure? As it is suggested, Boo was created alongside the universe. It might mean that he wasn't originally an evil being, just a chaotic one. Understandably, years and years of absorbing violent tendencies from different species can turn anyone crazy. Does that mean that only Universe 7 was left with a bad egg such as that? Well, we don't know. It's entirely possible that equivalents to Boo live around in other universes, or used to, or maybe they never became an issue. Maybe the malice in that universe was not as great as ours. I can imagine the 4 strongest universes having had that problem dealt with ages ago. Maybe Universe 9's appearance as a post-apocalyptic hellscape is the case of a Boo-type creature doing its thing, and not just incompetence on Sidra and Ro's part. Perhaps, but I personally like to think it's the latter, not doing their jobs right, and leaving planets to rot instead of keeping the cycle of creation going. After all, let's remember, the Trio de Danger could probably take a being like that in battle, but we don't know how long they trained to get into their current shape. How many leg days did it take for battle to get so good? It is also entirely possible that in some universes a Margin-like threat has simply not shown up yet, and might be a future plot point. We saw in some comments as well that maybe only Universe 6 could have one because only they and Universe 7 share sort of species. But we wish to debunk that, as we know that Universe 2 has both Yardratians and Tuffles, so it sort of doesn't work like that wholesale. As for your question regarding Time Patrol Trunks, Geek Freak 17, we still aren't sure. Technically, those Trunkses are separate beings, but him and Mai existing outside of time does raise some questions regarding the future of these characters, and it seems to us like a tease for the eventual merging of the two. As for the timeline problems themselves, well, we believe that the Triple T has only recently started to tidy some of those up, and until we get a post-super compendium, like the Daizenshu or maybe the Chozenshu, it's really hard to take most of these dates at face value. In any case, we hope that we've answered at least some of your questions about things that seem sort of confusing within Dragon Ball these days, or have very little explanation at the source. Rest assured that this is not the last video of this type, because Dragon Ball is full of things like this. So what do you guys think? Do you feel that this explanation has helped you in some way? Will we get more official answers to certain conundrums soon? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!